Staying consistent still feels like the one thing you just cannot get right. You've stayed up late reading about insulin resistance or watching videos like this, searching things like how to reverse insulin resistance. Can it be reversed? You've changed what goes in your grocery cart, meal prepped on Sundays when you'd rather be resting, tried hitting your steps goals, tried implementing early morning routines, tried the plans that were supposed to make this all stick. You understand what your body needs, not just the what, but the why. And you've tried and done more than many people will. And somehow, staying consistent still feels like the one thing you can't get right. And not because you don't care. You care deeply, which is why this is all so frustrating. You've tried, you've started, you've restarted. And the one thing that keeps getting in the way isn't a lack of information. You've done all that research. You've been told all the things, but it's the life that you're already carrying, the responsibilities that you're managing every day. You're managing a full schedule, whether that's a career, a household, kids, all of the above. And somewhere in the middle of all that, you're also trying to take care of your health, which is so commendable. That struggle with consistency is not a character flaw. And I don't even think it's simply a motivation problem. More often than not, it's a systems problem. And systems problems have systems solutions. Here's what this video will give you. First, the evidence on why consistency often fails. And second, I'm going to give you 5 specific evidence-based systems that you can start applying this week, today even. As we move through each system, an action step will appear on your screen. So pause the video, screenshot it, or write it down. That way, by the end of this video, you'll have more than just information. You'll have a plan. If you've genuinely tried and tried, fallen off, and quietly wondered what's wrong with you, that's not a trivial thought. And let's address that. As a healthcare provider working in endocrinology with a special focus on insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and obesity, something I've noticed is that we largely approach consistency through counseling and information delivery. Here's what I mean by that, and here's what it looks like in practice. You come in, you get your lab work done. Your provider may tell you your A1C is elevated, or your fasting glucose is high, or that you have insulin resistance, or maybe even that you have type 2 diabetes. Whatever it is, the diagnosis is given. You're then counseled on lifestyle interventions, movement, nutrition, weight management. You often walk out with patient education materials, a referral to a dietitian, or diabetes education classes. And then you go home with a lot of information, like a lot of information, or at least you should. And I want to be clear, the information is important. You need it. It's foundational, really, because how can we expect you to make changes if you don't understand why you need to make them? And it's important for you to understand what's happening within your body. And on top of that, the information is often what helps a person set the intentions for making these healthy changes. The problem, though, is in treating information as the end point. Knowing what to do is not the same as consistently doing it. There's that gap between knowing and doing, and I've talked about that gap on previous videos. But here's what the evidence shows. Psychologist Paschal Sheeran conducted a meta-analysis synthesizing data from 422 studies involving over 82,000 participants. The findings? Intentions accounted for only 28% of the variance in behavior. 28%. So even among people who truly intend to change, the majority do not follow through consistently. And likely not because they don't care, but more likely is that it's because intention and sustained action are governed by different systems. And closing that gap between them requires more than just information. This is called the intention gap, and it's a well-established finding in health and behavioral psychology. And when people can't follow through on something that they're really trying to do, the story that often forms in their mind, and sometimes within the messaging they receive from others, is that they are the problem. So along with being the problem, when people struggle to maintain healthy behaviors consistently, the story that they start telling themselves, and sometimes the story that they're told, is that they lack willpower, discipline, motivation, that if they wanted it badly enough, they would do it. But that story is incomplete, and it matters that it's incomplete because how we define the problem determines what solutions we reach for. But here's something many people don't think about. Managing a chronic metabolic condition is emotionally and cognitively demanding. It requires continuous decision-making in the context of a healthcare system that has limited time to coach you, and a food environment that is not designed in your favor, and a busy lifestyle that doesn't pause for your health goals. This is not simply a willpower problem. This is a systems problem. And on top of that, what chronic stress does to the brain makes this even more complicated. Chronic stress impairs the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that's responsible for planning, self-regulation, impulse control. Chronic stress reduces working memory, cognitive flexibility, and the capacity for sustained behavior change. So this all matters when you're compounding variables such as managing a chronic condition on top of an already busy lifestyle, plus or minus a heavy stress burden. So it's not a character flaw. This is neuroscience. When we keep reaching for things like improving willpower and motivation as solutions to what is actually a systems problem, we'll keep coming up short. And not from a lack of effort, but from applying the wrong tool. In my years working with patients managing these conditions, one barrier comes up again and again, and often quietly. It's shame. And I just want to clarify the difference here between shame and guilt. Both shame and guilt are hard emotions to experience. And in differentiating between shame and guilt says, I did something I should not have done. I made a choice that I wish I had made differently. I missed my workout. I had takeout every day this week. And those behaviors were inconsistent with my values or my goals. But shame says, I missed my workout because I am someone who can't do this. I always fall off because something is fundamentally wrong with me. Guilt is about behavior, what you did. Shame is about identity, who you are. With guilt, there's somewhere to go from there. You can change what you did. You can return to the appropriate behavior that you intended, one that's aligned with your values. Guilt is still painful, though, but it points to something that you can actually address and move, a lever that you can pull. Shame is different. Shame goes after your self-worth. It can leave a person feeling helpless, as if repair is not possible for them. Because in their mind, the problem isn't the behavior, it's them as a person, the whole person. And this is not confined to just an emotional experience. It also has clinical consequences. Research published in Frontiers in Psychology found that people with type 2 diabetes who experienced shame were more likely to avoid healthcare providers, skip or delay their medications, reduce their blood glucose monitoring, and disengage with their self-care behaviors. And research published in Clinical Diabetes found that shame and self-blame are closely tied to the stigma surrounding type 2 diabetes, and that this stigma predicts avoidance of care and reduced engagement in health behaviors. And in clinic, I see this through what we refer to clinically as diabetes distress. That's the emotional burden of living with and managing a chronic metabolic condition. And when that distress goes unaddressed, it often shows up as decreased engagement in self-cares, to include things like skipped blood glucose checks, missed follow-up appointments, reduced adherence to their medications, and gradual pulling back of the behaviors that matter most in managing their chronic condition. And diabetes distress and burnout can significantly impact clinical outcomes, and it is in no way a moral failing on the individual. Here's the cycle. Shame leads to avoidance. Avoidance can lead to reduced engagement with your cares and ultimately worsening outcomes, which can then produce more shame. You can see how this cycle perpetuates. And for people who are caught in that loop, the solution is not more information, and it's not more discipline. So what breaks the cycle? One area that's gotten some attention in research is on self-compassion. Now, self-compassion is often mistaken for lowering your standards, or letting yourself off the hook, or escaping accountability. Here's what the literature suggests. A 2025 meta-analysis from Baxter and Soroy was conducted synthesizing studies on self-compassion across populations of people with chronic illnesses. And that study found that self-compassion was associated with reduced psychological distress and better health-related outcomes. They found that self-compassionate individuals with chronic illness show more adaptive coping, better adherence to health behaviors, and faster recovery after setbacks. So self-compassion is not the enemy of accountability, because if you miss a week of training and your response is shame and self-criticism, the research predicts that you're more likely to stay off for longer, because re-engaging with your routine means re-engaging with the source of your shame. Setbacks are not evidence of who you are. They're information about what happened. What led up to you missing your workouts that week? That question prompts you to reflect. Work ran late, then traffic was crazy. And when you got home, your son told you that he had a book report due tomorrow that he forgot to mention. So instead of getting your workout in, you helped him through that. That's not failure. That's life. So if your response is acknowledgement without judgment, so that looks like, you know what? I got off track, but the next workout is available to me. I'm just going to return to the plan. And that way you can recover faster from a setback, significantly faster. That recovery speed, compounded over days, months, years, that's what builds consistency. And that consistency is what drives long-term outcomes. That consistency is what has you reaching your health goals. So if your goal is reversing your insulin resistance or reversing your prediabetes, putting your type 2 diabetes into remission, it's going to require consistency sustained over time. So that recovery speed is important because it's not whether you fall off, it's when you fall off, because we all do. But what matters is how quickly you come back. Now, there's a good chance if you're watching this that something has recently changed or shifted. A new week, a new month, a birthday, or a lab result that got your attention. I say that because that impulse to start fresh, start again, is a real one, and it's worth paying attention to. Researchers, Dye, Milkman, and Rice, analyzed gym visit data, Google searches for diet, and goal commitment patterns across multiple studies. And they found that people are more likely to initiate new goals following temporal landmarks. Temporal landmarks are things like a new week, so that's where you get the whole I'll start Monday, a new year, hence New Year's resolutions, or a new month or birthdays. And our data showed 33% more gym visits at the start of a new week and 47% more gym visits at the start of a new semester. So that psychological reset is real and it's a tool that you can use, but the same research showed that without real structure, the momentum quickly fades, which we see that all the time, right? After the new year, gym memberships are peaking, but by February, we see the rapid drop off. But this is more than psychology because scripture takes us further. But we don't have to wait for the new year, a birthday, a new month, or Monday. You don't have to wait for it, and you don't have to earn your way to it. You have one every morning you wake up. We find this in the Bible in the book of Lamentations. The book is 5 chapters long. These poems reflect on when Jerusalem fell to Babylon and the temple was destroyed. It reflects pain, loss, confusion, and devastation. It's Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 through 23. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And it's the only words of hope in that entire book. If you've tried again and again and fallen off more than once, more than a couple times, and maybe what feels like just repeatedly, you know the self-criticism that follows, where a missed workout becomes more than a missed workout. And then that shame cycle starts to set in. And I know that can be a very painful place to be. And if you're watching this and you're in that cycle right now, I want you to know that feeling is not the truth. You always have a fresh start. This morning included, right now included. And receiving that fresh start requires us to have faith and keep showing up. Now, before we get into the 5 systems, I just want to tell you about what building these systems look like in my life. For the first few years of my own health journey, once I got going, I can say that the consistency almost felt easy. Dare I say easy? If not easy, it was pretty close. My motivation was high. I wanted to show up. I had time to show up. I was seeing results, and I just kept feeding into a cycle that led to great consistency. But then my schedule got complicated. Between clinical hours, my studies, full-time work, demands of solo parenting, despite having good intentions and really wanting to show up, those 6 a.m. workouts and those 2-hour gym sessions just didn't stand a chance. Let me know if you can relate to that in the comments, where you have a routine and then your life changes for whatever reason. You move or you get a new job or parenting situations change and it just throws things off for you. And it wasn't because I didn't want it anymore. And I spent a lot of time trying to out-motivate myself, thinking like I wasn't motivated enough. But that didn't work because motivation is a feeling, right? And feelings fluctuate. But what did work for me, though, was shifting the question from how do I want it more to how do I set up my environment to where doing it is easier than not doing it. And that has really helped me. And if you've been following my series or other creators in the health space, especially on topics of insulin resistance, then you have the clinical science. So what we're doing in this video is building the structure and the systems to help make your health habits stick. So let's get into the 5 systems. And as we do, I want you to keep in mind that self-compassion is at the foundation of this. Because again, you'll likely fall off. We all do. What matters most is what happens next. How quickly do you return to the plan? So these systems are the structure, and self-compassion is what's going to keep you inside of the structure to improve your consistency over time. All right, here we go. The 5 systems, all evidence-based and all actionable. System number 1 is your social environment. We're starting here because we were never meant to do this alone. A study published in the Journal of Sports Medicine and Physical Fitness followed married adults who joined a fitness program, and they joined either with their spouse or as an individual. and they followed them for 12 months. And the results were pretty striking. Couples who exercised together had a dropout rate of 6.3%. But married individuals who joined alone had a dropout rate of 43%. And monthly attendance was also significantly higher in the pairs, with 54% compared to 40% from individual participants. And the number one reason why people dropped out when exercising alone, which was cited by 50% of all of those who dropped out, was family responsibilities and lack of spousal support. The most common reason people dropped out was not lack of motivation, it was lack of support. That's the difference between I should go and someone is counting on me to go, or even someone is rooting on me. And the Community Prevention Services Task Force under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services recommends social support interventions as an evidence-based strategy to increase physical activity. So those are things like buddy systems, group-based programs, and shared goal setting. For people managing insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, programs like diabetes education classes and community exercise groups can carry similar benefits. And for these populations, it actually works on two different levels here. The social support can help keep you returning, and the clinical component supports your metabolic health while you do so. And this extends beyond exercise. Social support is associated with better adherence to health behaviors broadly. So that includes medication management, dietary changes, and sustained engagement in cares overall. So accountability is not just a personal responsibility, but it's a powerful tool that can be built through relationships and community. In Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 and 10, it says, "Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up." The research just confirms what scripture named first. Here's your action step for this system. This week, identify someone who you can invite into your health routine and ask them. And I'm going to walk the talk here. I would love more accountability in my own health journey. And I have my close family circle that I've invited into this, but I'd also like to use this space, this channel, to grow a community of people who are doing the work. So if that's you, please subscribe and share your progress in the comments if you feel comfortable doing so. But I'll also be posting accountability checks in the community tab. And I think that'll be another great place for us to keep each other accountable, because I would also love to support you on your journey. System number 2, your physical environment. Yes, we're talking about something that you have direct control over for the most part. But hear me out. When a nurse ends her shift, she doesn't just clock out and say deuces to the oncoming nursing team. There's a handoff at shift change. The outgoing nurse walks the incoming nurse through all of her assigned patients, their status, their clinical plan, any medication changes, or any concerns to watch out for. A thorough nurse handoff puts the oncoming nurse in a good position to be able to provide quality care for their shift. You're doing shift change on your own life every single evening. And the quality of that handoff, the clothes laid out the night before, your meals prepped, lunch made and ready to go in the fridge, that all determines what tomorrow you will be walking into. And here's why that handoff matters at the brain level. Your brain has this cool structure called the nucleus accumbens. It's basically the reward gatekeeper. It runs a continuous cost-benefit calculation. Is the anticipated reward worth the effort right now? And it can discount future rewards in favor of immediate ones. This is called temporal discounting. It contributes to the reason why scrolling on your phone tonight feels more rewarding than packing your gym bag for tomorrow or doing your meal prep for the week. The payoff from tonight's preparation belongs to tomorrow's you. But here's what matters significantly for people watching this video. Chronic stress, which often accompanies managing a chronic metabolic condition, and in reality is affecting many of us, even without chronic metabolic condition, impairs dopamine signaling within the reward center of the brain. And poor sleep, which is also common with chronic metabolic health conditions such as insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, can have the same effect. And again, poor sleep is also affecting people who don't have metabolic health conditions. Both poor sleep and chronic stress reduce the brain's capacity to generate anticipatory motivation for future rewards. This makes sustained behavior change harder to initiate and maintain at the brain level. This supports why environmental design is so important. You're essentially building an external scaffolding within your environment so that you don't have to depend on that reward circuitry that's already under strain. Think of it like this. Every decision that you have to make to get to that goal, that behavior, that workout, that meal prep, is a potential off-ramp. You want to reduce as many off-ramps as you can so that you can make it to your destination, which is, in this case, the city called consistency. Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Keep your gym bag packed and ready to go by the door. Prep your meals for the week. or at a minimum, prep your lunch the day before. These things may feel kind of trivial or like they don't actually matter, but they do. They're what helps get you out the door and prepare to hit your goals for the day before your brain can talk you out of it. Without preparation like this, you can end up sitting down for just a moment, but then never getting up to do the workout, or hitting the drive-through because you didn't pack your lunch and the drive-through is convenient and you're hungry right now. And another piece of advice from the environmental design front is putting your exercise equipment where you can see it safely, mind you. Like your dumbbells where you have to walk past them, not where you're going to trip over them, but where you have to see them regularly. Resistance bands are visible and accessible. Clearing off the treadmill or the elliptical that might be hanging out in your family room, like not using it as a coat hanger anymore. Because if you have to find your equipment, unpack it, or declutter it, or set it up before you can begin, you've added friction and multiple decision points. And each one of those is a potential off-ramp. You can also use visual cues within your home to reinforce your identity or the goals that you're setting. A calendar with your meal plans or your recipes for the week or your workouts planned for the week, or words, quotes, and scripture that connect you to your purpose. This could be a whiteboard or corkboard or somewhere where you can see it. So try to avoid having like an app that you can bury in your phone. You want to be able to actually see this regularly as a reminder. Here's the interesting thing about the environmental design. Dopamine actually fires in anticipation of a reward, not just once it's received. Neuroscientist Wolfman Schultz showed that with consistent repetition, the brain learns to release dopamine at the cue that predicts a reward, not only when the reward arrives. So that's what we're setting up for ourselves here. Every time you do that small setup action and you receive the reward of the smooth routine that follows, or you hitting the goal that you set for that day, you're training that association. So over time, that preparation action itself begins generating anticipatory dopamine. And those setup actions begin to feel worthwhile all on their own. So that's not relying on motivation. You're establishing automaticity. And that is a goal. Automate as many of your health habits as you can. That sets you up for consistency over time. Our environment shapes our decisions far more than we recognize. These small structural changes can outperform willpower-based attempts at behavior change. Here's your action step for this system. Lay out your workout clothes, pack your gym bag, place your equipment where you can see it, or prep one meal for the next day. Or at the very least, eliminate one decision between you and your health behavior. System number 3. Plan for real life. You ever notice how your goals are almost always set with ideal circumstances in mind? But we already know that life is not going to deliver us ideal circumstances consistently. And people who stay consistent are not ones who never face obstacles. They're ones who plan for the obstacles before they arrive. Psychologist Peter Galwitzer calls this implementation intentions. And he found that when people specify in advance when, where, and how they will act and what they will do when a specific barrier occurs, they follow through at significantly higher rates than people who rely on their goals alone. So what does this look like? In practice, this is if-then planning. So not I plan to work out 3 days a week, but instead, I plan to work out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6:30 a.m. If my usual accountability partner is not available, then I will go alone. If I have to travel for work, then I will do a 30-minute body weight exercise in my hotel room. If I am sick, then I'll rest without judgment and return at the next available opportunity. So what this does is convert decision-based behavior into trigger-based behavior. So when those barriers arrive, because we know they will, you don't deliberate. The decision was already made. You simply execute. So one primary plan, one specific backup written down. Here's your action step for this system. Before you end this video, write one if-then plan, one primary plan, and one specific backup plan. I recommend you make this plan for one of your biggest health goals that you're trying to improve your consistency on, and really try to reflect on some of the biggest barriers that interfere with you being more consistent in that goal. System number 4. Temptation bundling. I've kind of talked about this. Our brains are wired for immediate rewards. The challenge with things like consistent exercise, consistent physical activity, strength training, healthy eating is that the biggest benefits, such as improving your A1C, stronger muscles, stronger bones, better cardiovascular health, and even weight loss, arrive weeks and months from now. Delayed rewards lose that neurochemical competition against what feels good right now. And that's not a personal failure. That's how our brain is wired. We're living in an instant gratification culture. So we are used to getting the things that we want when we want it. That only perpetuates that expectation and neurochemistry. Researchers at the Wharton School of Business designed a randomized controlled trial to test a solution to this. Dr. Catherine Milkman and her colleagues gave participants access to audiobooks that they were already highly engaged in with one constraint. They could only listen to the audiobooks at the gym. The result was a 51% increase in gym attendance, and the effects were strongest amongst the busiest participants. Dare I say that's the population who struggle most with consistency? And at the end of the 9 weeks, 61% of the participants were willing to pay to maintain that restriction. They recognized that system was working for them. So if you have a stationary bike, a treadmill, or elliptical that's not being used consistently, commit to only watching your favorite show while you're on that piece of equipment. Try that for 1 week and see what happens. I use this strategy often in clinic for my patients who are big gamers or they just love scrolling social media. And especially when asking to reduce screen time is a big barrier, I'll make the recommendation, okay, if you're going to play the video games, then only play them while you're standing. Or if you're scrolling, stand and scroll. It becomes, I get to watch my show and I happen to be moving while I'm doing it. And this way, you're not fighting your reward circuitry as hard. You're actually working with it. Here's your action step for this system. Choose one show, one podcast, one audiobook that you're really into right now and restrict it to only workout time. So you can only be watching it, listening to it, or doing it while you're working out. Try that for 1 week and see what happens. System number 5, your why. Now, up to this point, we've covered 4 systems. And in my opinion, it's this last one that really holds things together, especially on days where it feels like even implementing these systems or strategies is met with a lot of friction. It's your why. And I'm sure you hear this a lot. That's because it's truly that important. And I'm not referring to answering the question of why should I work out or why should I eat healthy? Because across the series, and if you're someone who's already been doing your research, you likely already know the answers to that type of why, right? Like you understand majority of the science or enough of the science to create the intention of trying to do these things, change these behaviors, and you're looking to be consistent now. I'm referring to your why, what's deep at your core, the one that's specific to you and your life, that one that has nothing to do with the lab values, nothing to do with what your healthcare provider has recommended for you. I'm talking about the one that has everything to do with who you are and who you're becoming. It has to be specific, layers deep, not just the surface stuff. I know for me, it's for my family. It's for me to live out my purpose. It's for faithful stewardship of the body and the life I've been given. And on days when I don't want to work out or don't want to train, I don't argue with those feelings of not wanting to do it. And I don't try to manufacture motivation that I just don't have in the moment. I've tried that and it didn't work. But I consistently come back to my why. And I'm not saying I don't have setbacks because I do. I'm quite literally coming out of a setback. But what has helped me come back faster is refocusing in on my why. I want to be present physically, mentally, emotionally for the people I love, for the work I've been called to do. And I just can't do that well and for as long as I possibly can if I'm not tending to my body. I know I'm not always going to want to do it, but focusing on my why, it pulls me out of trying to find that external motivation to get going. 1 Corinthians 6:19-20 says, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies." That identity framing is not just motivational language. It's a shift in how I relate to the behavior. This system is supported by the self-determination theory, which distinguishes between behaviors that are driven by external pressures and behaviors that are driven by personally meaningful values. Intrinsic motivation, which is doing something because it's aligned with your identity and what you genuinely value, predicts greater persistence, particularly when conditions are difficult. Because external motivation says, I should work out because my healthcare provider told me to, and feel guilty if I don't because I know I'm supposed to. Intrinsic motivation says, I exercise because I'm someone who stewards their health, because I want to be fully present for the people that I love, because this body was entrusted to me, and I want and I intend to tend to it well. Find your why, be specific, write it down, and consider putting it somewhere where you can come back to it and look at it when you are just out of motivation. Again, motivation is a feeling, and feelings fluctuate, but your why, that's a conviction. And that stands a chance of holding stronger than external motivation. So here's your action step for this system. Write down your why. Think about it truly, deeply, meditate on it, Be as specific as you can. Go layers and layers deep. When you think that you've gotten to your reason, ask yourself, why? I want to work out. Why? So that I can lose weight. Why? So that I can feel better. Why? Keep going layers deep. Don't just stop at the surface level. And put that reason somewhere where you can see it, where you can go back to it when you need it. All right, I'm going to bring this all together. Consistency does not fail because of a character flaw. Oftentimes we're struggling because we don't have a good system in place. The foundation that helps make all of this possible is self-compassion. People who recover faster from setbacks are not necessarily the ones who are hardest on themselves. Instead, they focus on taking the next available opportunity to get back on track, avoiding the shame spiral. Then we have our 5 systems. Social support. Find your people. Remember those exercising with a partner versus alone produce a 6.3% versus a 43% dropout rate. Who you invite into this matters, so choose wisely. And choose this community if you want some additional support. So please subscribe and share your progress. And look out for those accountability check-ins that I'll be posting to the community tab. System number 2 is environmental design. Make the intended choice the easy choice. Eliminate the decisions between you and the behavior, between you and the habit that you're trying to build before the next day starts. Number 3, if-then planning. One primary plan and one specific backup plan. Write it down. The goal is to replace those in-the-moment decisions with pre-made responses to reduce decision fatigue. Number 4, temptation bundling. Remember, here we're going to pair exercise or movement with something we truly enjoy doing. We're working with our brain's reward system and not against it. And number 5, your why. The person, the reason, the calling, the conviction that holds it all together when nothing else does. Of all these 5 systems, pick one, just one for now, and apply it before the week ends. Try doing one of these systems consistently and then adding on from there. Habit stacking. Trying to implement all 5 systems all at once can risk having none of them stick at all. Once you're consistent with one, then add another. So you came into this video with a systems problem, and now you're leaving with 5 evidence-based systems to help you improve your consistency. But in case you are still looking for more support with improving your metabolic health, check out this video here where I share my stewardship framework, which is my evidence-based, faith-inspired framework for how I approach my metabolic health. And I will see you in the next one.